freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same. And if you and I don't do this, then you and I may well spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it once was like in America when men were free.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode number 367 of Gun Freedom Radio, where we engage, we educate, and we inform. We are brought to you by azfirearmsauctions.com, where you set the price on guns, ammo, and accessories. I am one of your hosts, Cheryl Todd.
And I'm the other guy, Dan Todd. Our theme today is Think Like a Survivor. Our guest today is Stephen Willeford. Stephen is a hero in the Sutherland Springs Massacre. On the morning of Sunday, November 5th, 2017, Stephen performed a courageous act of faith and heroism. Alerted by his daughter that a mass shooting was occurring at the neighboring First Baptist Church in Sutherland Springs, Texas, Stephen wasted no time in response. Stephen confronted the murderer without hesitation. His many hours logged at the gun range and his years' experience in gun safety helped prepare him for the response. Through an expert training and though his expert training and practice were used in the decisive moment, Stephen credits his faith to God for keeping him calm and focused throughout the unimaginable situation.
Wow. Thank you so much for being with us today, Stephen.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me on today.
Absolutely. And, as I say to any of our guests that are coming on for the purpose of talking about some of the worst moments, most traumatic moments of their lives, thank you so much for being willing to continue to talk about that time and those incidents, because it does help others be aware and educate them to the dangers around us and the need for training and preparedness. So thank you for that.
Well, I tell people it truly is for me. It's a little bit of an outlet and therapeutic for me to think that I might help someone else to get that survival mindset, to come to terms with what would happen if it happened to me, and to make those decisions ahead of time. Because, they say that your body can never go where your mind's never been. Mm-hmm. So I encourage people when they hear about a situation such as this to decide in their heads what they would do and decide that they would take action, because you never know. Sutherland Springs is a little town of under 600 total population. And if you think it can never happen here where you are, you're wrong. It could happen, and beginning to be more likely to happen. And that's still a very small percentage. You're more likely to get struck by lightning, but still it could happen. And if you don't think about these situations ahead of time and make a conscious decision that you will not be a victim, I'm going to react like a survivor would act. Absolutely. And then you start thinking that way, and then you start getting the training to make that happen.
Well, the proof of that pudding, that by you taking the actions that you took and then talking about how it happened, what happened, the proof of the pudding that it matters to do these things is what happened 1 month after Sutherland Springs in another Texas church with your now friend, Jack Wilson. Jack Wilson. Talk about that.
Absolutely. So Jack Wilson, it was a month and a half after Sutherland Springs happened. I guess right after Sutherland Springs happened, Jack Wilson started working it out in his own mind. that they needed to have a safety response team. And Jack Wilson was I guess you would say, I think he was a reservist, a police reserve officer. And he had the right mindset. He was a range instructor. He owns his own shooting range, just like I did, and had taught the concealed carry permits and instructed people to be more abled. Well, Jack, right away after Sutherland Springs happened, thought, I want to protect our church. And he started a team within a month and a half after Sutherland Springs happened because of what happened in Sutherland Springs. And it was a couple of years afterwards, a armed man came in with a shotgun and killed 2 members of Jack's church. And Jack shot across, and it was about a 15 foot, or no, about a 50 foot, about 15-yard shot across the pews. He headshot the guy within 6 seconds of when it started. And Jack himself said, I don't recommend people shooting for the head. He said, but because of everybody coming apart and scrambling in the pews, he said, that was my only clear shot that I had, that I could not hit anyone else accidentally. And so he took a 15-yard headshot, and the video's out there. It was amazing. And Jack was just cool as a cucumber. Made that shot, ended the threat, and only 2 people other than the gunman died that day.
And, your incident, your actions inspired him to he already understood the importance of training, but to say, well, I'm just one person. How can I form a team? Because clearly the threat is real and it can happen here. And then it did happen there. So
His
that,
team had logged over 900 hours of training.
wow, that's
They
phenomenal.
trained at his facility, and he trained them. And real shortly after he took that shot, team members ran in, and you can see them running into the church, down the aisles with their guns drawn, and they were ready also to assist whatever, and shut the system down, and had everything in hand. When the police department showed up, everything was already, it was calmed down, everything was neutralized, and they were watching out over their whole congregation.
And that shows the importance of, the good guy, the trained individual with a firearm, the responsibly armed citizen. And the Sutherland Springs Church, they weren't oblivious to that. But through a series of, people's schedules, I believe you were telling me off air, it turned out that instead of having a team fully in place, you know, different people were in different places and they weren't inside the church that morning. Can you talk about that just briefly?
I believe that there are no coincidences in life, and the Bible talks about that too. The fact that I believe that the devil has his timing, and so does God.
Mm-hmm.
And so the pastor normally carried at the church, and Frank Pomeroy at that moment was carrying, was in Oklahoma City training to
Mm-hmm.
be able to be a black powder instructor,
Mm-hmm.
to be able to instruct the youth in black powder or primitive weapons for the summer camp.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was there, and he normally carried. Rod Green normally carried at the church, and Rod Green was a former Army, and he served in Vietnam. and he carried normally at the church. And I truly believe that Rod is the kind of person that would have responded. He's been in battle. He would have responded correctly. But that particular day was the day that the time changed. And he
Yeah.
knew the pastor was out of town, and he chose to go and feed his cattle before he went to church. He was going to be late. And so he was late for church that morning. And there was another man that normally carried, and he was late for church that morning also. And then the final person that normally carried had sent his gun with his wife because she was going on a road trip.
Mm.
He didn't want her to be unarmed on the road trip, so it sent his gun with her for the road trip. So all four men that normally carried at that church weren't there that morning.
Mm.
And it's like Satan said, today's the day.
Mm.
And God said, but you forgot about my servant Stephen.
Mhm.
Normally I would have been in my own church that was about 35, 40 miles down the road.
Mm.
But I was supposed to start an on-call at my hospital. I worked as a maintenance plumber, and 1 out of every 8 weeks. So what are the chances? 1 out of every 8 weeks, I was going to be on call. And it just so happened that I was going to start my on-call on Monday morning. And I was going to work anywhere from 20 to 30 extra hours that week. And I knew the calls were going to come in at 1, 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning or whatever. I would have to be at work. And so knowing this, I stayed home from church to be able to get some rest, rest up for the oncoming week. Now, like I say, normally I would have been at my own church far away from this church.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was in condition white. I was sitting at the house in my bedroom, checking my messages on my phone, just relaxing.
Mm-hmm.
And someone said, you didn't take time to put your shoes on. I said, I didn't. They said, can't believe you didn't take time to put your shoes on. I said, you're lucky I had pants on, because this would be a totally different story if I had not had pants on. They call me the barefoot defender because I run across the street barefoot. And I'm so glad they don't call me the pantsless defender.
Exactly.
That's funny.
Oh gosh. Oh yeah. Well, that probably would have stopped the guy. Like, what is happening? But so
Can Stephen, can you kind of refresh us? Okay, so you got out and in your barefoot, and then what happened?
Well, as I ran across the street, first, when I ran out the door, my daughter had made me aware of it, and she called 911. And I asked her, she called 911. She said, I did, they're aware of it. And so as I ran out of the house, I had an AR-15 in one hand and a magazine that I just stuck 8 rounds in, and I didn't even know how many rounds I put in it. But as I ran out the door, I just grabbed a handful of ammunition and started sticking them in the magazine and checked up the magazine. As I ran outside the door, my daughter followed me outside, and I turned and I looked at her. I said, go back in the house and load me another magazine. I said, I just have a handful of ammunition and I may need more. And she went back into the house. I knew she couldn't go in and find a magazine and load me a magazine, but I didn't want her to be a victim also. He had way too many people that I cared greatly about. I didn't want my daughter following me into battle. I didn't want her to be there as a target for him.
Right.
Nor did I want her to see me fail if I was going to fail. And then she would have run to my side and she would have been his next target. So she went back in the house, and as I ran across the street, I yelled out. And I truly believe that the Holy Spirit was on me, because why would I yell out? I can't explain calling out and why I would do that. I know that is giving away the element of surprise. Tactically, it was the worst thing I could do, but I don't believe that I could help it. I believe God called a demon out within the church, and I think that was his voice that yelled out from me. And in the church, at that very moment, He had just shot Chris Workman's mother, Julie, through the breast, and then he shot Chris in the back. He paralyzed Chris from the waist down, and he was walking over and he aiming his pistol. And Chris said, I could see him point the pistol directly at me. And he said, I thought, okay, I'm going to meet Jesus at that moment. And Chris heard me yell out. And as soon as he did, the shooter stood up, dropped his rifle in the church. Why would he do that?
Right.
And turned and came out of that building and shooting at me.
Yeah.
Now, reality tells you it would have taken 2 seconds to finish Chris and his mother off.
Yeah.
And then come out and meet me.
Right.
But when Jesus walked into the garden, the two possessed men saw him.
Yeah.
And the demons within them said, we know who you are. Have you come here to torment us before our time? And Jesus drove those demons out of those men. And I believe it was that same voice that called out. And when a demon is called by God, it has no other response than to comply immediately.
Absolutely.
So he dropped his rifle in the church and came out and started shooting at me. He hit the truck in front of me. He shattered the windshield of the car behind me, and he hit the house behind me. And I heard God speak to me and said, don't worry about those shots. Do what I sent you here for. He had on class 3 body armor and a ballistic style bulletproof helmet, and the shield, a dark tinted shield that came down to here. And police asked me later what race he was. I said, I have no clue. Can you give me some sort of description? He could have been a robot. All I saw was his mouth from here down. That's all I saw. I hit his left chest, went into the body armor. I hit him in the abdomen, went into the body armor, but he felt it. Had his vehicle parked in the middle of the street with the engine running and the driver's side door open. And as he turned to his side to get into his vehicle, I saw the type bulletproof vest he had has a front plate, a back plate, Velcros across the side. I saw where it Velcroed across the side. I put a bullet high in his side, and I put a bullet in his legs. I put it between the plates. I put it in his legs. He was able to get into his vehicle. And Joe Biden says, we're going to teach police officers to shoot bad guys in the legs. So just so you understand, he was shot in the legs.
Yeah.
Got into his vehicle, slammed the door, and he put 2 rounds through the side window. And I saw the glass open up and the glass pieces falling. I put one where I perceived his head to be. It split across his forehead, right underneath the rim of the helmet, split across his forehead. He accelerated. He knew he was in trouble. Easy to shoot women and children hiding under pews and stuff. Now all of a sudden he's being hit. And every time he pulled the trigger at me, he missed. And every time I pulled the trigger, he hurt somewhere. He realized it. He accelerated. He turned the corner and started going as fast as he could away. By the time I got in the middle of the street, his vehicle was 150 yards down the road. And I put one through the back windshield, and the police say that went through the back windshield, shattered it, went through the driver's side seat and hit him just right, the left shoulder blade. And he topped the hill and left. And I'm standing in the middle of the street saying, it can't end this way. He's getting away. It can't end this way. I looked off to my left, and there was a pickup truck parked there at the stop sign. He had witnessed the shootout, and he was on the telephone talking to 911. And I ran over and I tapped on the window. I never met this man before in my life. I tapped on his window and said, that guy just shot up the Baptist church and we have to stop him. Now look at this scene for just a moment. He just witnessed a shootout with a guy with body armor on with a pistol and another guy with an AR-15 shooting it out in the street.
In his bare feet.
and then he sees one guy take off running, and the guy with a rifle comes over and taps on his window and said, "That guy just shot up the church. We need to stop him." Every sane person in this world probably would have put it on the floor and left me at the stop sign.
Right.
But this is Texas we're talking about. We're not known for our sanity. A sense of duty, a sense of belonging, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
The next thing I heard were the locks come open on Johnny's truck, and I climbed up into the cab of a truck with a long, tall, good-looking young Texan
Mm-hmm.
with a white Western hat,
Mm-hmm.
feathers sticking out of the hat, a longhorn skull tattooed in the middle of his neck, and the horns run up underneath his ears.
Uh-huh.
And I describe Johnny, and people think I'm joking about it, but no, he's 100% Texan. I climbed up in the cab. He's still on the phone with 911, and we take off running as fast as that truck could take us down the road, dodging vehicles, splitting cars, and pursuing. And as I ran down the road, I dropped the magazine, and I'm looking, one round in the top of the magazine, one in the chamber. I got 2 rounds left.
Mm.
And right away I told Johnny, I said, "Tell them, hurry, hurry. I have 2 rounds left," and he's still got on class 3 body armor.
Mm-hmm.
So we're running down the street at over 95 miles per hour is what Johnny said. Oh yeah, 100 miles per hour wouldn't surprise me at all. He was running as fast as that truck could go. And at first we didn't even see the shooter.
Mm-hmm.
And he's trying to give dispatch as we cross roads and stuff. He's telling dispatch where we are and we're in pursuit. And finally we came up behind the truck and the SUV. It was a little Ford Escape, and I knew that was it because it's gray in color. The back windshield was busted out.
Mm-hmm.
I said, "That's him, that's him." And I said, "If you catch him, you're going to have to put him off the road." And Johnny at this point had not said anything to me at all. I still didn't know his name. And he turned and looked at me just matter-of-factly and said, "Yep, I already figured that."
Mm-hmm.
And Johnny's probably thinking, "I always wanted to try a pit maneuver."
And if he wasn't, then he was getting ready to, right?
That's it. Johnny already made it up in his head. He's going to put the guy off the road.
Wow.
And before we got to him, he pulled off to the right-hand side of the road into the ditch.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a road sign right in front of his vehicle. And that moment, Johnny pulled up, still on the road behind him, and stopped. And I put my rifle out of the passenger side window and opened up the door with my left hand. And I was going to push the door open. I was going to step out into the street, use the door for a shield, and re-engage him. And I'm thinking to myself, this is going to have to be good.
Mm.
I got 2 rounds left. I can't waste anything at this point.
Right.
I pushed the door open and I started to step out. And before I got my foot on the ground, the shooter accelerated. He hit the sign. It flipped over the vehicle and went right back up on the road. And I barely got my foot in the door before Johnny was off running after him again. Wow. This time he swerved off to the left-hand side of the road, through a fence, and out into a field about 50 yards. And I told Johnny, I said, "Whatever you do, get down below the dash and just stay out of the gunfire." And I opened up the door this time and walked around and put the rifle out over the hood. And Johnny did whatever millennial would do in this world. He pulled out his phone and started videoing me with the phone. I was like, "Really? This is what you want to do at this point?" Your viewers need to know.
They need to
Estimated 5 to 7 minutes behind me. Or 5 to 7 minutes behind me.
Mm-hmm.
And in a church full of victims, they couldn't last another 5 to 7 minutes. He had already dropped 15 30-round magazines in and around the church and was continuing to kill people from pew to pew.
That's when they say when seconds count. Seconds are what count. minutes are an eternity.
Well, Chris Burt wrote a book, and in the subtitle of the book, When Seconds Count, Police Are Only Minutes Away. And I'm not trying to put down our men and women in blue.
Oh, absolutely
In
not.
fact, I would say kudos to them. They were charging into a situation that they knew there was a mass shooter, and they didn't even know most of the people that were in the church. And they're charging in to risk their own lives to do what they can. But the police were 5 to 7 minutes behind me.
Yeah,
You are your first responder,
absolutely.
and you need to learn that nobody's coming to help you in any kind of timely situation. Police generally get there in time to mop up the blood, take the evidence, and hopefully arrest someone. You need to have a mindset that it's not going to happen if I have any say so in the situation.
Right.
I'm going to stop it as quickly as I can. And no one's coming to assist me until it's done. When the police finally arrived on the scene, which seemed like an eternity for me, I was focused on my sight and my rifle pointing at the driver's side door and yelling, "Get out, get out." And there was no movement, and I couldn't see inside the vehicle because it was parked away from me at just a little bit of an angle, but parked away from me. I couldn't see what was going on inside. And I've got my rifle focused, and finally a police cruiser showed up, and I heard the PA system say, "Driver, get out of the vehicle with your hands up." And I turned and looked up the left, and 50 yards from me was a squad car. And he keyed the mic again. He said, "Driver, get out of the vehicle with your hands up." And here's another thing your listeners need to know. When the police show up, comply, comply, comply. That officer wants to go home to his family that evening, and he might not know you're the good guy. So I laid my rifle on the hood of the truck, and I started back to the back of the truck with my hands out, my palms facing him. I wanted him to know I am not the threat. And he looked at me, and he made eye contact with me, and he keyed the mic one more time, and he said, "Not you." Apparently he knew that I was the good guy. But I
not
didn't
always
know
the
that.
case. That's not always the case. You know,
It's
they're
not
coming
always
in
the case.
blind. They don't know.
They may not know, but I was talking to dispatch, and dispatch was relaying them information. But you know how things, when you speak, don't always come out the way they should. And I didn't know that he knew who I was until he said that. And at that point, I ran back over to the hood of the truck. I picked up my rifle, because even he was 100 yards from the guy. I was 50 yards from the guy. He was standing behind his door with his PA system in his left hand, his pistol in his right. He was 100 yards from the shooter. I was 50 yards from the shooter. I had a rifle. He had a pistol. He knew even at that moment, I had a tactical advantage over him.
Yes.
And so I waited until several other police cars got there, and they started pulling out AR-15s, and I'm thinking, I am so done now.
Yeah.
They got this. They don't need it. I pulled the rifle off the hood, and I laid it on the toolbox behind Johnny's cab. And now I'm trying to sit there and hold on to the edge of the bed of Johnny's truck and get my feet into shade. It was November 5th, and I know not all the states that listen to you understand this, but it was 90 degrees that day in Texas on November 5th, and I'm trying to get my feet in the shade. They're now starting to cook. My dogs are barking. And so I stayed that way for another 30 to 45 minutes, and I'm 50 yards from the police line, and I'm thinking, okay, I don't know what's going on or why they haven't came up to the truck. I don't know, but my feet, I can't wait here any longer. And I started to run back to the police line, and they came over the PA system, stay there, stay there, stay there. We're going to send a cruiser up for you to use as cover to come back here. And so they sent a police cruiser up there, and I kind of squatted down and ran beside it to get back to the police line. And now my hands start shaking.
Sure. That adrenaline dump,
I just
right?
come down off of an adrenaline high like you can't believe. My hands are shaking, and they set me down on a rail there by the road, and an officer walks by, and I said, "Excuse me, can I call my wife?" 200 yards up the road, I can see my wife's car up there, and they won't let her down. The fire department's blocked it all off. He said, "Sure, call your wife." I said, "No, can I use your phone?" He said, "What, you don't have a phone?" I said, "Look, I'm barefoot." The phone was the last thing I was interested in.
Right.
So he let me use the phone, and I called and I said, can you get me some shoes?
Yeah.
My wife says, "All I have is my Crocs." I said, can you let me, and my heels are going to stick out that far over Crocs, but whatever. I said, "I'll take them. Can you get them, David?" "No, they won't let me down there." And so the officer said, I asked the officer, I said, can I go get the Crocs from? "No, you need to stay here." I said, "But my feet are hot. I need something for my feet." And he opens up the back of his police cruiser and said, "You can sit in the back of my cruiser." And I'm like, "No, I'm fine."
Yeah,
I'm
good.
good. My feet are cooking. I don't want to sit in the back of a cruiser at this point.
Yeah.
But
No.
it was a crazy day, and I want to recognize some of the people within the church. Because Julie Workman, I referenced her earlier. She had been shot through the breast, and one skipped off the concrete into her leg and through her leg. And her son was shot in the back and was paralyzed, and he knew it instantly. And when the shooter left, Julie looked over at a little girl that had been shot through the head, that moments before had been swinging around her legs and singing praises to God.
Yeah.
And Julie started screaming. Gunny Macias, and no one seems to even know Gunny's first name. They just call him Gunny. He's a retired gunnery sergeant, Marine Corps. Immediately after the shooter left, Gunny barked out in his loud Marine Corps voice, "Hallelujah, hallelujah, even in this, praise God."
Oh, wow.
He had been shot 5 times in the abdomen, couldn't even stand up from his own wounds. Gunny lived and survived through battles and stuff as a Marine, and in his own church, in his own home, was shot 5 times in the abdomen. And then Julie screamed out because she saw this little girl, and Gunny said, "Julie, we need you." He barked out, "Julie, we need you. None of this took God by surprise, and you were made for this moment. We need you." And Julie, bleeding from her own wounds, started tying tourniquets and saving lives within the church. And a little girl came to Gunny and said, "Gunny, I'm scared." And Gunny started singing "Jesus Loves Me" with a little 5-year-old girl.
Oh, wow.
He went from using his abilities as a gunnery sergeant, barking orders, saving lives within the church with his voice,
Yes.
to comforting a little girl, singing "Jesus Loves Me" with her.
Wow.
Zach Poston's mother, or Zach Poston's grandmother, when the shooter came to Zach, Zach shoved another little girl underneath a pew with his foot. And for that, the shooter shot Zach 7 times. And in the end, Zach's grandmother crawled on top of Zach and saved Zach's life and sacrificed her own. And then when the paramedics got there, Zach Poston, they tied tourniquets on both his arms and his legs. And he started saying, I'm fine, save the children."
Wow.
The first officer on the spot was Hank Farnett. Hank, when my wife talks about Hank, she one time said, Hank looks all of 12 years old. And I said, oh, come on, baby, give him some credit. He looks like he's at least 15. But Hank was the first officer on the scene. Hank runs the qualifications and stuff for his department to qualify everybody with a gun. He came running in with an AR-15 ready to do battle. And when he saw the shooter was gone already, Hank went out to his car because for years he had been collecting trauma kits out of his own pocket.
Oh, wow.
Opened up the trunk to his car, distributed trauma kits, and he tied 4 tourniquets, saving 4 lives.
Wow.
Before the EMS or anyone else got there.
Wow. That's phenomenal.
And the very hospital that I worked for, University Hospital, that day was having an active shooter drill.
Oh my gosh.
On a Sunday. And all the doctors and nurses saying, why are you having this on a Sunday when we could be spending time with our families at church? And the real call came out. And since it was all hands on deck, they were able to get all 20 ORs up and running before the first victim showed up.
Because they were already there. Wow.
If you can't see God's hand in this, you're willfully blind.
Amen to all of that.
And I look at what a thing you had to go through. Thank you very much, Stephen, for that, for sharing that with us. But I look at that, and when people say that, guns are bad, and if you wouldn't have been there to help with that, several more people, this man was intending on killing everyone in that congregation.
And getting away. He
and
left
getting
his
away.
truck.
And he had
running.
bulletproof running.
Right.
And
so he had his own self-preservation in mind, and we're running super short on time. So I do want to give everybody like the end of the story. So did the bad guy get arrested? Did he die of his own hand? Did he die of the wounds that you were there to inflict?
He called his father and his wife. He had handcuffed his wife to the bed that morning when he left. With 2 infants in the house, he had handcuffed her to the bed, and she was pregnant with his child also. And he had handcuffed her before he left, and before he started shooting, he called his father and said, my wife needs you, go to my house. And so his wife and his father were together, and as we were chasing him down the road, he called his wife and his father and said, I've done something horrible, and I've been shot multiple times. I'm not going to make it. And he turned the gun to his head and ended it. He committed suicide. I'm okay with that.
Yeah. That is just so convoluted, and there's lots that we can go back and probably unpack about him and his mindset and his motives, but the fact that there is evil among us, and it probably looks normal until it doesn't.
I truly believe that he was possessed, that he was demon possessed. And as Judas, when he betrayed Jesus, I believe that the demon had left Judas at that point after Jesus had been crucified. And so what he took 30 pieces of silver, threw it into the temple, and he went out and hung himself. After the demons had left Judas to his own despair and to realize what he had done, he went out and hung himself. And I believe that was the case with this man. He realized what he had done. Why else would he make the statement, I've done something evil, I've done something horrible,
Right.
I've been shot multiple times, I'm not going to make it, and he killed himself. I truly believe that at that moment, the demons had left him to his own despair. He knew what he had done, and so he ended it.
Wow. So it is so hard to even leave that story and try to transition to something else. But time is not our friend ever, right? But definitely in the story you're talking about, and right now. We are going to have you out here in Arizona very soon. There is a big annual Second Amendment celebrate and protect the Second Amendment rally event that I'm blessed to help organize every year. And you are going to be our end note speaker. I know everybody will be so excited to meet you in person, have an opportunity to shake your hand, take selfies, listen to your speech. But there's an organization that we need to thank for putting this together, that you and I are going to meet each other in person in Arizona, and that is US Law Shield. They are sponsoring you to come to Arizona and to speak to our audience about the importance of, as we've titled this episode, thinking like a survivor, being trained, being prepared. What is your relationship with US Law Shield? How did that all come about?
I actually work with US Law Shield. I have my own promo code. If you go sign up for US Law Shield, and please do. And if you sign up with Good Guy with a Gun, all together, no Good Guy with a Gun, use that promo code, you actually get 2 months free for signing
Oh my
up.
gosh.
And so please use my promo code. It'll help you as well as myself. I'm
Mhm.
also doing two to three, where they haven't told me it's two definitely, but maybe a third workshop with US Law Shield while I'm in Phoenix.
Mhm.
So please come to the workshop, and you can see what US Law Shield has to offer you. It's a prepaid law service. If you use your hands, use a bat, a chain, a car, whatever, as a weapon,
Rock. Yeah.
a rock as a weapon, and you get arrested for it, US Law Shield will take care of all of your bills, your lawyer services and stuff, and will defend you all the way till there's no appeals left. And they don't have a cap on the amount of money they spend on fighting for you, for your legal use of a firearm or whatever. You know, they will defend you. And today's world, that is excellent. I didn't know I needed a lawyer. I didn't need a lawyer for my defense as far as legal defense after Sutherland Springs, but I needed a lawyer that defended me actually against the media. The media was horrible. And you don't it's something I never would have thought that I needed a lawyer for, but I did. And
Crazy.
just to defend myself in the public domain, they told lies and stuff and were called on it by lawyers, and straightened out and had to print retractions and things like that. And so US Law Shield is something that you really, really need to look into and sign up and come to a workshop and talk to the good lawyers and stuff in your area in Arizona. So US Law Shield is good to have on your side. And hopefully I'll see your viewers at our workshops. Look them up, find out when they're doing it, and please come to the workshop. I'd love to meet and shake your hand.
Absolutely. Well, that is so important for people to understand and to know, is that, you know, and sometimes people in your position that did all the right things for all the right reasons, they do still end up in a jail cell and their firearm confiscated, almost always, right? And they do need a lawyer to work through those pieces of it. And that's expensive. And you can't go to work if you're in the middle of something like this. That is very well said. And I know Dan wants to say a thing, and
No,
we've got to fly out
no,
of here.
it's all good. I'm speechless. This whole thing. I mean, you did a great job presenting, and I really appreciate you sharing that story.
Just start going out to the range and getting trained. Remember, uh, carrying a gun is a responsibility.
Mhm.
And every bullet that you pull the trigger on, you are responsible for. Whether it hits its mark or whether it misses, you're responsible for whatever it hits when it misses.
Right.
So it's your right to carry. It's your responsibility to get trained.
To train.
Right.
Amen. Well, thank you so much. Can you tell folks, like, other than seeing you at the rally in Arizona on Saturday, February 19th, that's at our Arizona State Capitol from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Other than that, other than using your promo code Good Guy with a Gun with US Law Shield, are there ways that people can follow? Because you're still doing a lot of work in the Texas legislature, and you're very involved. You're doing a lot of things. How can we stay connected to you?
So go to YouTube and in the search for Barefoot Defender. And Barefoot Defender, please subscribe to my page and hit the notification bell and give me a thumbs up.
Absolutely.
And I have a website, and it's thebarefootdefender.com, where you can go and you can book me to speak, and you can also go there. I have merchandise, and you can find merchandise on my website, and you can see where I'm going to go, where I'm going to be at, and coming to a state near you. I help churches and businesses set up safety response teams and train them properly and stuff. And I work with several different organizations like Survival Mindset in Pennsylvania, and Sheepdog Seminars, and Strategus International. You can see where I'm going and what I'm doing, and please sign up there at thebarefootdefender.com. And hopefully I'll see you guys.
Absolutely. Thank you again so much for your service. Thank you for sharing your story with us and for all you do. I look forward to meeting you in person in Arizona very soon. God bless.
God bless.
Bye-bye, Stephen. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
What a story. I mean, I'm still moved on. I can't comprehend. And, just the thing about training. None of us have enough.
I don't think so, because how do you know what you're going to be presented with? Right? Exactly. You don't know exactly. Just like him, he would have never trained barefoot.
No, and he'd have never
Right.
known that, he probably looks back and goes, why didn't I already have a magazine loaded?
Right? Things like that.
Yes, this just things. And but I tell you, I'd much rather be in that position that he's in than what if I would have. What could I have
Exactly.
done?
The gentleman that's trying to help his wife, right? His wife's going on a road trip, one of the
Right.
congregants of the church. He's like, here, wife, I want you to be protected. You take my handgun. Now he doesn't have a handgun. Things like that. Just thinking ahead and saying, well, how do we make sure that she has her own and I have my own? And, all those kinds of things. But, training is more than just knowing how to manipulate your firearm. Right. And I
Much
think
more.
sometimes people, that's as far as they go with it. And it is about, understanding, if I'm not inside my own home and something happens, where am I carrying? How do I get to the thing I'm carrying, the tool I'm carrying?
It's like he said, your body can't do what your mind hasn't done.
Exactly.
Or is that what he said?
Your body won't go where your mind hasn't been.
Right.
So yes, training is so important. All right, we have got to fly out of here. My goodness, I mean that's a story that it impacts you on so many layers and so many levels. It's going to be, I think, with us for quite a while.
What politician out there? Okay, my angry hat's coming on now.
Uh-oh.
What politician out there can hear that story and say, we need gun-free zones, we need gun
Because
control?
all they focus on is the bad guy and what the bad guy did with what tool? Oh, the gun. Well, if I'm not mistaken, the bad guy and Stephen Willeford both had the exact same kind of tool.
Right.
The AR-15 that's trying to be vilified. And it's like, so if it's the gun that's bad, then how do you explain Stephen Willeford? Right? It's not the gun that's bad. It's the human being misusing the gun, whatever the tool
We
is.
have, attention politicians, we have bad people out there. And we have to protect ourselves from bad people, and the law enforcement can't do it on their own. Citizens have a right to protect themselves.
A right, not a
right,
privilege. A
right to protect themselves. So don't take something away from me to prevent me from defending my family or friends or strangers.
Absolutely, which is this whole story. So again, if you can be in Arizona on February 19th of the year 2022, because sometimes these shows get watched years
What a
later, right?
perfect time to be in Arizona.
Oh, the weather is always
And that's a
perfection.
beautiful, beautiful area.
The
Beautiful
capital
trees and
is gorgeous. The Arizona State Capitol. It is a family-friendly festival type event. We have a junior patriot park. So bring the kids, bring the neighbors. I think we have almost 30 speakers. Stephen Willeford will be one of them. Lots of great vendors, amazing, delicious food trucks. It is just a fun, beautiful day. Bring some lawn chairs, bring a blanket. Plan to spend the entire time, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. It is just an amazing time of togetherness and meeting with your friends and that you don't even know you have yet. So please come out to that on February 19th. It's a Saturday, 2022, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., Arizona State Capitol lawn. All right. Thank you, Stephen Willeford. Just
yes.
thank you. I mean, for everything and for spending this time with us. Thank you to our listeners. People all over the world now are going to, if they haven't already heard this story, they're going to be touched by these events and can consider their own situation. Am I prepared enough? Am I thinking like a survivor? Thank you to our listeners. We've got to get out of here, but until next time, Dan, what are we going to do?
Pray for our politicians, pray for our leaders. I'm not going to call them leaders. I'm sorry. Pray for them.
And pray for our nation. And the few people out there that rub us the wrong way, that we don't like, pray for them especially. All right.
Yes.
Until next time, be good to each other. Have a great week. And God bless.
Bye-bye.